Let me quickly change some settings. Oh, now someone that really wants my attention is calling. Let's see. Let's see just in the chats if people do actually hear us right now. Otherwise,
Yes, that's
would be pretty
yeah,
pointless.
we are back. Now
Yeah.
we are back online.
Ah,
So we
great.
start over again.
Yeah. Well, it's already great to get all these feedback. So I think everything is working because people are cheering and saying yes. Well, great.
Yeah,
Hey,
top.
I was saying next 60 minutes we're going to talk a lot about join, of course, but specifically about running.
Yes, very
Um,
exciting feed.
yeah, I can imagine like because we went live Friday,
Right. Yep,
right? So a week
a
ago.
week ago.
Did you got a lot of questions on support?
Yes, yes. So I think there was quite a good number of questions, but it was more in the lines of the excitement of people that or users that's been waiting in anticipation for a few months while we were working in the background to build the running feature and to make sure it's up to the standards we would like it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, there was a good number of questions, but all in a positive sense, and people just waiting for what's next. Will we have this integration, or when will this feature be coming into the running feature that we
Yep.
launched? So yeah, it's from my perspective, from support side, there's quite a big excitement for the running feature that we launched, and I think we as a company also feel that we've been wanting to launch it for so long. So yeah, it's a all in from all aspects. It's a big excitement.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, in that sense, I kind of have a confession to make that, like already almost 2 years ago, I announced in a podcast, in the beta for the podcast, I announced that I was working on a feature like this, and back then I was just like, we had the idea, but we basically haven't figured out back then how to do it, and
Yeah,
yeah, last year this feature took most of my time basically because especially the combination between running and cycling, that's a pretty well difficult one, so to say.
yeah,
And like you said yourself as well, it had to be at a certain standard in order to release this. And
yeah,
especially last couple of months, it took a lot of time. But I'm pretty proud on what we achieved here. And of course, there are still things to improve or features to add. But yeah, I think we managed quite well. And well, for this setting, let's let's try to solve as many questions as possible,
yeah,
answer as many
yeah,
questions as possible. Although I
yeah.
must
So I
admit,
think,
sorry,
yeah, go for it. No, no,
yeah,
go
well,
for it.
because like we sent out a survey about a month ago or something, and we got like 300 questions. I mean, that would be
Yeah,
impossible to answer them all. But
yeah.
yeah,
I
let's
think most importantly, let's start with the question of what is joint running and what is it about, and really in short, how does a user that's already been using join start using join running?
yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, so maybe answering this question is actually, and it's a kind of a negative approach, but I do think it's important here. Like, what is it not? So,
Yeah,
first and foremost,
that's
we designed running as a tool for cyclists to be a better athlete, basically. So that doesn't necessarily means that with running we would like you to be a faster cyclist. We do think running adds a lot to your cycling routine, and you will be a better athlete and a healthier cyclist. And even on the long term, it will probably make you a faster cyclist. But on the short term, it's not necessarily that by adding runs to your cycling routine that you fly up a hill faster.
yeah. no, you'll still need to focus on your cycling.
Exactly. Yeah, because like one of the most important rules in training, basically, or in building a stamina or making progression, it's about training like the specific needs that a certain sport will ask from you needs to be covered. Otherwise, you won't improve. You know, it doesn't make any sense
Yeah,
to like go into ski jumping when you want to win the Tour de France. Um,
yeah,
that's only for Roglic that worked, but normally it doesn't help you. But we do believe, and that's actually why we've added this feature, that with running, because cycling is a pretty one-dimensional sport, and especially being on a bike year after year, could impair like your coordination, some muscle imbalances, some core stability issues, and having kind of like running in your toolkit. Also, when you're abroad for work, for example, or you have like limited availability, then being able to go out for a run, that's just a great tool to have.
yeah, definitely.
And that's basically the first and foremost reason why we built this feature. Because the problem with the tool is like it's not like, okay, you just flip the switch and join that you want to incorporate running and then running is in your toolbox. Because the problem for a lot of cyclists is basically that you need to start with running really carefully or really slow. You really need to build up like that running stamina. Basically all your joints and your muscles need to adapt to this kind of sport and to the impact of this sport. And then after a couple of months, you would have like running in your toolbox to be able to also get like all the cardiovascular benefits from running.
Yeah.
Be-
And I
so
guess this is kind of also the important point where a a current joint user, or actually any athlete for that matter, that's predominantly a cyclist and they would like to start running, is to really start slow, and in within our settings in the app is to set it to 1 day a week and set yourself to a amateur runner, because that is in all realisticness what you are, and really start with the shorter, slower runs, and Join will also pick that up and you see that you've either done some runs in the last month or 2 months and incorporate that into your running for the next week or 2 weeks.
Yep.
And continuously adapt according to that. Maybe what I would like to do is maybe answer a question that has already come in quite early on the live chat, and maybe from there jump to one of the 300 questions we received earlier, where S. Saunders has asked a question that if it's possible to indicate on what specific days you would like to run. Let's say may it be cycling on a Tuesday, running on a Wednesday, etc., and so on. Is it possible in the Join app to indicate that at the moment?
No, it's not. Well, it kind of is and it's not. And it was actually internally, it was a big debate. Like, hey, do we leave kind of like all the planning into our hands of the users? Or is that basically the job of Join? And in the end, we decided that actually the job of Join to plan your runs and rides in a way that we think, it's the best way of doing so. And so currently what we do, we tell you like, hey, just give us your availability. Do give us like the amount of runs you prefer to do per week. And not every week that's more like an upper limit. It's more like a maximum. So not every week, it's depending on your total availability, whether you would reach that amount of runs. But like, let's say that you've indicated in your profile that you want to do 2 runs per week, then Join looks at like the total training volume that week. And for example, when you have a lot of availability on a certain day, Join will probably plan like a big ride, like an endurance ride on that day. And it will hopefully try to plan your runs in the days you have just less availability. So we basically decided that we would like to leave it up to the training engine of Join. What is like the best way of doing a ride or a run? But that being said, there is already the functionality in Join that you can really easily swap, and let's say it correctly, you can currently swap a ride for a run. And we already tested it this week. I think at the end of next week already we will have the update that you can also do it the other way around. So when there's a run scheduled, you can swap it to a ride. So in that way, you can still decide, you can still let Join decide where it's better to take a rest day or plan a ride or run. And then you could always like swap it the other way around. So
Yeah, I guess it's quite beneficial for, let's say, people that's currently in Europe or in the winter months where you come back from work, it's been a longer day in the office than expected, and you would rather opt for a half an hour, an hour run.
Yep.
You know, like time is a bit limited, so you can just swap it around with just one push of a button, and you've got a running session in your training plan that's best suited for that day and your current fitness and fatigue levels. So that's a really nice feature to have.
For sure.
Yeah, that's really, really nice. And then another question came in from DCD Europe, where the user is asking, is it useful or adaptable for people that have been running already for a long time?
It is. It's like the only thing you need to do is make sure that in your profile setting you set it to an advanced runner, like your running experience needs to be set in to advanced. And it also helps when you have like your Garmin or your Wahoo history like in the app. So we actually see that you're already able to do longer runs. And if once we've detected that, then the Join engine will start planning based on that baseline, basically. So be careful what you wish for, because if you have a lot of availability and you're already proven to be like a long distance runner, then Join will set you up for those longer runs.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's also good to mention on this topic is that our core will still be cycling, and cycling will still be the main focus point on your training plan. So Join will you'll be able to set a cycling training plan, but incorporate, for this user, for example, a main part of that also running, as they are an advanced runner, because they've been running for quite a few months already. So this user could really adapt nicely with that if they're training towards like a really big goal in the Alps, for example. So they could benefit with their current availability and running into that. That's really, really nice. Sorry, could you? Yeah, somebody's just asking to increase my volume. So I'm sitting quite close to my microphone at the moment. I'm not sure if you can perhaps increase my volume.
No, I took a look at it, and the settings are like, seems to be okay. I hear you very well.
I would maybe try to speak a bit louder then.
If anyone else has like some remarks to make, please drop it in the chat. Otherwise,
or perhaps, I will ask you a question, and then I'll just take a minute to switch my microphone to a different microphone, and then that could maybe solve this problem. That we can, maybe I'll be a little bit louder.
Let's see.
So one more question from Patrick, still in the live. How is running progress measured in Join? Is there equivalent to an FTP test, or do you need to manually adjust your 5K running pace?
Currently it's not like because in cycling in your rides we detect like whether there's an FTP increase. We are currently not doing that automatically for running. We would like to do so in the future, like for example when you improved your PB on a 5K or a 10K run, that automatically we adjust like your functional threshold pace. But currently we are not doing that yet. So yes, Patrick, you need to manually adjust your 5K pace when you discovered like, hey, I improved. So that's the current approach.
Yeah, yeah. Can somebody could just give a thumbs up or something if my microphone is a little bit louder now, please? Then that could help. That's a really good point that you made there, Jim. And I think it's also good that people can, from time to time, also just test themselves every few months on their own 5K running pace to ensure it's up to date and up to standard.
Yep. There's this question from Anders Weiner. What approach should we take when running on a hilly course? Because I like that one very much. Well, of course, if you live, so what we do in Join that afterwards, we are looking also to graded average pace, which is basically something that it's kind of comparable to normalized power in a sense that it filters out the effect of running uphill or downhill. That's you call it GAP, graded average pace, and that's what we take into account in the analysis. But for yourself, pacing yourself, uphill or downhill, of course, you will see that your functional threshold power or pace, excuse my French, or the percentage of that pace that you want to hold is of course different running uphill or downhill. So in that sense, you really need to take into account, like, first of all, in my opinion, RPE, so rate of perceived exertion. So basically, when it's kind of like VO2 max all out effort, an 8, a 9 or a 10, whether you run uphill or downhill, it should feel like that. Secondly, take a look at your heart rate as well. But first, feel the intensity. Secondly, take a look at your heart rate. And of course, you can't trust pace in that sense too much. That being said, when running on a hilly course, running a lot of uphill and downhill does take a lot of experience, because the strain in your muscles is even bigger than just running on a flat course. So try to be careful basically in that sense.
Very important. And I think it comes back to a point that we've made earlier. If you are an amateur runner, is one of your first runs you're doing in a long time, or it's your first run ever that you're doing, it's to really take it slow, and it would be better for you to start running for a few weeks on a flatter course so that your body gets used to, especially your knees and your ankles, used to the impact. Because as cyclists, we are not used to having, it's not an impact sport per se. Although every now and then, unfortunately, we do come off our bikes, and that is an impact. But we do not have, each pedal stroke is not an impact, and our bodies are not used to that. And that is important to also take into consideration.
For sure. Hey, Rohan, I don't know if it's just me, but the things you've changed in your microphone setting, it's a bit worse than it was, to be honest.
Okay.
Kind of sounds a bit mechanic, so I would suggest just to go back to the previous settings.
Okay, I'll do. Let's switch it back to that.
Yeah, this is better, and maybe just try to speak like pretty close to the microphone, and then I think we're set to go. There's another question from the live Q&A which I find really interesting from Tijmen. And Bob is mentioning that the update on iOS. He's a developer within our team, of course. Yeah, you know him, but I don't think all viewers know him. Anyway, it's coming already after the weekend. Yeah, that's basically what I said.
That's very exciting. Very exciting.
But it's better when hearing from him than hearing from us. I've set my lactate threshold heart rate to 180, and I was wondering why Join applies different heart rate ranges between running and cycling workouts. Yes, I think this is still a question for me, basically.
But maybe it's you answer it?
Yeah, well, that's actually the interesting part. Well, first and foremost, you basically with running, you use more and bigger muscle groups. And therefore, your heart rate can be a bit higher at the same intensity. So here you actually see why sometimes I'm a bit skeptical about heart rate, that heart rate is not kind of like the limiting thing of your sport performance, of your athletic performance. Because your heart rate can
Yeah,
be higher, but it's depending on how many like muscle groups you can recruit, and that's also depending on the sport you are performing or executing. And therefore, also with running, technically, your threshold heart rate can also be a little bit higher than compared to cycling. So, technically, we could ask people in the future to work with also a different threshold heart rate with running and cycling. However, that difference is pretty minimal, and we would like to encourage people also to take a look at their pace and first and foremost take a look at their rate of perceived exertion. And then by
yeah,
asking people to set different threshold heart rates for running and cycling already takes a lot of experience. And
yeah,
that's not making any sport less complicated. That's basically, yeah, in our opinion, overcomplicating things, because that difference in your threshold heart rate is also depending on the fact whether you're fatigued or not, what you did yesterday,
yeah, yeah,
how much stress you got to work, whether you do a run in the morning or a run in the evening. So instead of overcomplicating things with different threshold heart rates, we decided to work with one heart rate because, once again, the difference between it for most people is pretty minimal and doesn't affect a lot, like within your zone one, zone two, or whatever. And but we do take into account that with running, it's basically, and you might even experience that when you start running, like kind of like your base pace kind of level and the heart rate that goes with it is instantly higher, although maybe it doesn't feel like that, than it is with cycling. And the reason for that is a pure physiological reason, and that's that you can just recruit bigger and more muscle fibers, basically. And your heart rate
yeah,
doesn't have a problem in just, yeah, pumping blood around.
yeah.
That's not the
Yeah, it's
limiting,
like,
that's not a bottleneck.
yeah, yeah, it's actually a very good point that you've made now regarding RPE. It's actually such an old-fashioned metric, if you want to call it that, to measure how hard an effort is for you. But it's still in the deep into the 21st century. It's quite an accurate measuring tool. And it's not heart rate, it's not power, for example, but it's still knowing your body and what your own limits are. Because a 2 or 3 RPE is generally very similar and the same for most people. Because around a 2 or 3 RPE, you should still be able to have a fairly easy conversation, which is normally around zone 2. Uh, yeah, so always start off with that is probably the best approach to take from it. Yeah, and then a nice question that came up, and this is once again for you because it's on the more technical side of the running, is what Roland 115 did. So that's why I saw to try increase my microphone. Is this question one, and question two was how much do I lose in potential joint level when I switch a ride for a run? So 3 rides and 1 run instead of 4 rides per week. So in theory is I think what he's trying to ask is that if if a user would swap a cycling session for a running session, will they lose their joint level, for example, or will it not increase as much, or will it increase more than what the cycling session would be?
Yep.
Um, that's what I understand from that question. It's actually quite a nice question because there's a few tickets that came in this week that relates to this in some way or another, and I've already replied to a few users on that, but I think it would be good to also get your perspective on this, and hopefully 1 or 2 of those users that I've dealt with during this week are also listening in, and they could get your perspective.
Yep. Yeah, well, to really answer that one, like on an individual basis, that kind of difficult because first of all, how much you lose depends on like what joint level do you currently have. If it's like really high, maybe all the way up to like 30 or 35 or so, yeah, then if you go back to like one ride or one ride, three runs, or just only three rides and one run is the question there, right? Yeah, then
Yeah. Yes.
potentially if your level is already pretty high, you would lose a bit, but not that much, to be honest. Because of course, yeah, the run, once you are a more experienced runner, of course,
Yeah.
you will the run itself will contribute to like your cardiovascular health, and also you use a lot of like the same muscle groups, but the problem is you kind of use them in a different way, and that's kind of a difficult part, that a lot of like of the adaptation that you actually create is based on like how the nervous system adapts in like how it controls the muscles basically. And for running, that's different than for cycling, and therefore you don't really make that progression. And you might also experience that a run will, especially in the beginning, will impact your next ride for a bit, because you might have like some soreness, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, the run, the one run, potentially it kind of could keep you on the same joint level. That would be my answer.
Yeah.
And it
Most
will
likely.
improve like some muscle imbalances, some coordination, maybe some cardiovascular strength as well. But um, you wouldn't go from like level 30 to 35 by adding a run.
Yeah. I think that hopefully that answers your question, Roland. And if you have maybe a question on top of that, please feel free to ask it, and I'll look out for it, and then we could answer that in a more specific way if you need. But I do think that the way Jim has answered it, it really covers all bases on that. Um, yeah, is there a live question that's popped out for you, or can I fire one away at you again?
No, I think there's still some live questions that are really interesting, but I need to scroll up a bit to answer, for example, the question of. Yeah, there was, by the way, a question or remark about power. There are also
Yeah.
sensors like Stride, for example, that measure running power. Well, the biggest
I
problem.
see yours has made a remark about that, and that is also actually something I got quite
Yep.
often this week. That was quite a popular topic from our side, from support.
Yep.
Is it something we're looking at, or will we incorporate it, and how will we look at that
Yep.
type of data?
To be honest, it kind of depends on how power in running is developing in the future. Right now, with the current state of it, like, yes, it does take into account whether you run uphill or not. But the problem with these sensors, it's not like that it's really measuring like the energy distribution between the sole of your shoe and the point of contact of the surface. So, for example, it doesn't really take into account whether you walk, whether you run on a beach or on tarmac. So
Yeah.
that's kind of an issue there, and it does take into account whether you go uphill or downhill, and that's interesting. It would be though great if like the running power is in some way comparable to your cycling power, because then those power numbers would really come alive. If that would be the
Yeah.
case, that incorporating running power makes a lot of sense. Currently, like said, we are in the business of not overcomplicating sport. Cycling
Yeah.
at first, but
Yeah.
running as well. By just adding all these sensors, without like, if we still look, for example, at like in professional athletes that that run marathons, for example, it's not like that everyone there is running on power. And the other way around, I mean, you can't imagine like a Tour de France squad without a power meter, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and there's basically a reason for that. So um, I'm really interested where running power goes towards in the future. But currently, in the state it is at the moment, we don't think that we should like recommend everyday runners out there to get on like running power. That being
Yeah,
said, of
definitely.
course, if you're really into these gadgets and tools, yeah, it could help, and it does add something. So I'm not want to hold you back there, but it's not like that we would recommend like running power for everyone.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, so one more question that I think I would be able to answer, as it's more on a general philosophy of training, is what Roderick has asked. If you, for example, have two running sessions per week, will Join propose one tempo interval and one LSD run so that you also get better at running compared to always just doing slow runs? So the idea what will always be implemented here is, with what we're doing with cycling now, it will always be in a structured way. So you will not simply, if you have 2 runs or 3 runs a week, just get one type of running session. May that be LSD, may that be VO to max sessions, or may that be tempo sessions. So there will still be a structured and a polarized way of planning this, and this will be incorporated into your current cycling training plan as well. So there will be a balance between that, and Join will always try to improve your cycling, but also, if you're a beginner runner, try to slowly increase your running ability. It will not immediately throw the hardest running workout at you if you are not able to do that, or if Join also does not find that you are capable of doing that based on your history, your current running ability, and especially your running athletic profile. So all these things will always be taken into consideration, and it will always adapt week on week based on what you have done, and if you are able to run at a higher intensity. So for me, for example, I know I can do an LSD run of 45 minutes or an hour, but I can't go and do 30 minutes of running intervals like at VO2 max. I will just be too sore. I will just be too uncomfortable. And that is also something you should take into consideration with yourself. That, can you, or are you physically able to, at this moment in time, do a, let's say, 3 5 minute intervals at like 5K race pace at running? So that's also, it's good to have the balance of what Join provides you and building you up, but also taking your personal um, feeling about the running session.
Yep. Yeah, that's basically how it works. I mean, in the end, you if you are up to that level, you would get like a few to max run. When we think like in the total training load and distribution, it makes sense that today you should do a few to max effort. So it's really about that
Yeah,
combination, you know. And if you did
yeah,
like a VO2 max session already like 2 days ago on a bike, and whether that was planned or not, you won't get another one like the day after that, for example. But in a run, that wouldn't make any sense. Um,
yeah.
um, yeah, I find this question also really interesting. Um, Yeah, the heart rate question we solved already. That was just a couple of minutes ago. But the question of Joris, is Join running just to complement your cycling training, or also to be a better runner, and to what extent specifically? Um, well, over the past half year that I'm already working with Join, it made me a hell of a better runner. I went to cramping out after 5K to a half a marathon at a decent speed. So it kind of depends, of course, on what kind of runner you already are. I mean, um, from my perspective, being a cyclist from when I was 16 or so, and just started running now about a bit over a year now. Yeah, then you can make a lot of progression, and you can get up. Yeah, I mean, I just ran a half a marathon at 1 hour and 20 minutes. I mean, that's not a professional time or anything, but if it could get me up to that speed, yeah, then it could definitely make you a better runner.
Yeah, for
But
sure. But I'm also sure, based on your history and your experience with cycling and just training in general, that
mhm,
there were more times than not that you also listened to how you felt and how your body felt. It's not like you just went from one day better and better and better and you continuously progressed upwards. I'm sure there were a few days that you felt like my body is a bit sore after this 1 hour run, or I'm feeling a little bit tired or a little bit sore. And
yep,
it's just listening to your own body and allowing your body to push you and tell you when you can push.
yep, yep, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, shall
very
we just
nice.
continue in the live chat if that's okay with you?
Yeah, yeah. I'm very happy with that because I think there's a nice, good flow coming in from the live chat, and yeah, it's nice to have people also asking questions again and questioning an answer
Yeah,
that we have given to give them a little bit of a better perspective of that.
for sure.
So I would like to maybe go back to the live once again, and a question that a user asked Patrick. With cycling, it is preferred to ride on power instead of heart rate. For running, is it better to focus on pace or heart rate? And
Yep.
what if it is heart rate? Is a wristband okay, or do you need to wear a chest strap?
Yeah, well, the last generation of wrist watches are pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, very, very
Um,
good.
I started out like I went from an Apple Watch to a Wahoo watch to a Garmin watch, and I kind of like improved like over the last half year, every time a bit. But once again, I mean, so I did like a half a marathon on Sunday. I did a big effort on Swift on Tuesday, and yesterday evening on a Thursday evening I did a run, and I was constantly like, and my heart rate, and it was at 8 in the evening. I had a long day, just put the kids in bed, and I still had some soreness of last Sunday because I did like all out effort on that half a marathon,
Yeah,
and um, and I was constantly like, and I was looking at my pace was just as I wanted it to be, like around 5 minutes per kilometer, kind of easy, but my heart rate was just through the roof, and it didn't felt like it, and I was constantly like, is this wristwatch, is there something wrong, is it? So yeah, once again, I mean, and after a couple of Ks I just decided, hey, I just gonna keep this, yeah, what would normally be the lower end of my endurance pace, with just the feeling that I have in terms of RPE, and that's what I went for, and I ignored my
yeah,
heart
yeah.
rate. And still up until today, I don't know whether my wristwatch was like that the sensor wasn't picking it up.
Reading a little bit. Yeah,
Could be, uh, but yeah, I don't really care. But because yeah, heart rate can be so confusing. Only
yeah.
like, and
But I guess,
especially with running, like if you do it in the morning or in the evening, that's already such a big difference. Well,
yeah,
it is in my
definitely.
case anyway.
Yeah,
So
and I guess that's where it comes back again to the accurateness of RPE and how you yourself measure that. Is like in your situation, your pace was on target, your RPE was on target, but your heart rate was, due to so many different variables from the last few days, was higher. And that is where you should find a balance between the pace, your RPE, and your heart rate, and to kind of, if your pace and your RPE is feeling zone two or endurance pace, then that is most likely at that point in time the more accurate measurement to take than
yep,
just
Well, and Joris is chipping in here at the same point, like he's saying,
Or
yeah,
there could
but
be so many.
yeah, and Joris is chipping in here again, like he's saying, like, yeah, but why don't you use power? Yeah, but why don't I use pace? So
Yeah,
why would I say to everyone, buy that power sensor instead of like using pace or combining it? And of course, I mean, I think it really works for yours to combine pace, power, RPE, and maybe even on the last part a bit of heart rate.
yeah,
But then again, you are adding extra sensors that, yeah, that like, or let me answer it in kind of a different way. I think what our job is basically is to give you like as much of the recommendation with the least amount of troubles. And yes, power can add a little bit to that, but only for a couple of percentage. And with
yeah,
heart rate, if we leave that aside, but we look at RP and power, we can give you a pretty good advice on how to um, distribute your intensity in a run, and also evaluate how intense it was, what you did.
yeah,
And that's basically the job of a proper workout. And then of course there can be a
yeah,
lot of extra sensors being added, like for example, yeah, why don't we add a temperature sensor? Like, how was my,
yeah,
I would be really interested. I didn't use it this time, I use it a lot indoors, like a core sensor for like my core
yeah,
temperature, because that helps me in my indoor rides. But would I say to like all the people on join, hey, you should all go and work with core temperature sensors? Yeah, I do say that to a lot of, or to some of my professional riders that I still coach. But
yeah,
it it would be a pretty cheap advice to advise like any amateur recreational cyclist that they should use a core temperature sensor, because it adds a lot of extra hassle. And
yeah, for sure.
that's
And if
kind of
I
what
could
we're
compare
trying to
the
do.
two, yeah, and if I could compare just or make like a comparison really of what Joris is saying is, if you for example are trying to juggle balls, like let's say you can easily juggle three different balls, and you can do that for the last year, but now you're trying to add the fourth and the fifth ball, which the balls that you're juggling is making reference to heart rate, power, RPE, pace, all those type of different variables or measuring tools you can put in. You will most likely drop the ball on one of those occasions. So it would be best to, in my opinion, and I think that's also what you're trying to say, is to focus on the basic things, and may this be what's working for Joris is if a power measuring tool and the RPE measuring tool is working for him, and
Yep.
he finds it's beneficial to him, then you should continue using that. And then the way we at Joint plan your training program, that would be on pace. If you have set your pace in your profile, then you can incorporate your pace versus your power, your running power. And I would assume he already knows that his 5 minute pace is equivalent to his zone 2, maybe zone 3 power running pace. Yeah, it's actually it's a big topic, and it's something you could discuss for so long. So I think these days there's so many different measuring tools out there that's available on the market, and people are interested in using them, and they're trying to explore and they see what's working for them, and they obviously want us at Joint to also try and incorporate these type of things at some point in time. But
Yep.
I just think so many of these things are just so new on the market that
Yeah,
the
well,
research behind
yeah, but and then we're gonna quit this topic because we want to answer other questions as well. But I really like this one, because in what way and what level Joint Level cooperated with running experts and coaches? Well, we worked a lot also with triathlon coaches, because especially making the combination really working, that was really a pain in the ass. But what actually convinced me of not incorporating power, running power in this stage, so once again, maybe somewhere in the future, but currently like I said, we didn't incorporate in this stage because speaking to actually running experts that were coaching like professional athletes in the field of running, they were not using it, and they had their reasons for it as just expressed already, and that kind of like convinced us not going that way right now. I mean, there would be other coaches that use it, of course, but most of it are not using it in the professional field. And that was for now also a factor to take into account. And once again, by the way, if it works for you, great.
Yeah, for sure.
But let's be honest here, most people don't have a sensor like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think more people are using pace or heart rate at this very moment in time than there would be people using power as a measuring tool for running.
There's a question. Oh no, go ahead.
Go for it.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'll go. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. It's Kai
Yep.
van Ende.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully I pronounced it correctly. He says, I'm a speed skater. I do 2 training sessions a week, mostly a combination of durability and 1 interval for 1 hour. Is that better compatible with running training sessions?
Then I guess the running session is like the 3rd session? Or
yeah, it's a bit unclear if the 2 sessions a week is skating, or is it cycling, or is it running? So that maybe it would be best for the viewer to elaborate maybe on that question.
Yeah, because I think like next to those training sessions, he also does some speed skating, or those training sessions are the speed skating training sessions. I don't know. Sorry, it's pretty difficult to answer this one.
Yeah, let's wait for this user to maybe just elaborate on that question.
That would be great.
And then one from Willem, where he's asking, it's in Dutch, but I translated it quickly from our Dutch to English. And he's asking how much availability does he need to increase his joint score. He says that his joint score has been remaining the same for the last few months. And then he's asking, so it's like basically asking where can he increase his availability and by how much.
Well,
I think that's a very difficult question to answer accurately, but
I
think we could just give the general picture of what is most of the time needed to increase your joint level.
The whole pitfall of human physiology is that your body just adapts to certain stress levels, to training load, whatever you just throw on that body. But if you don't give it the incentive that it needs to adapt even more, because that training load is always the same, that volume is always the same, then your body is pretty lazy in that sense. That if there's not an incentive to improve even more, because the training load is not being added, then also your joint level will not increase. It will just stay the same. Which sometimes, of course, I mean, doing the same and basically, in terms of longevity, it's you're not doing a bad job. Staying it the same, like even your aging, could be already a great goal and a great achievement. But if you really want to be better at something or keep improving, you need to consistently increase your training load, and therefore also you need to periodize like what you're doing, because for everyone gets it, like you can't like unlimited increase your amount of hours per week. I mean, But like, for example, for a pro cyclist that is training like a pro cyclist like Taco van der Hoorn that I'm training and that's able to do like 35, 38 hours a week. And I'm talking about training. I'm not talking about like 38 hours of slow endurance ride. But being able to physically be better or become a better cyclist at like 38 hours per week, it basically took him around 10 years to get there. From like junior when he was 17 and like every year doing a bit more. So it takes a lot of time and effort to get there. But also at that level, you need to be able at a certain point to really handle that load. And that takes time. And if you're as talented as Mathieu van der Poel or Pogacar, you will probably get there already in a couple of months. But
and I think for all our average cyclists, I think it's that you'll always find a really big benefit to try increase your weekend rides where most of us have more availability on hand, and try to do 3-4 hour ride or availability on a Saturday and a Sunday, and just by doing that from a very like average, like let's say beginner to a intermediate cyclist, they will already benefit by just doing that, and maybe slowly when the weather starts getting better in the southern hemisphere is to try, the northern hemisphere, sorry, is to try get your weekly rides a little bit longer. Maybe an hour to an hour and a half, because you'll have a bit more sun, the weather's a bit more pleasant, and just these smaller rides will build up. It will accumulate over time, and you'll see your fitness levels will go up. Your joint levels specifically would also start going up, and you don't need to do like what I like to call these Euro training sessions of going outside and ride for 6 hours, but then you are tired on a Monday or a Tuesday because of this really big ride you did.
Exactly.
Yes, your joint level will go up, but it will also come down again because it's a consistent training sessions that accumulates.
Yep.
And that is where the real benefit in training comes in, as you've made the explanation.
Yeah, so sometimes just letting your joint level slip a bit, like for example during the winter, and then picking up the pace when summertime is around the corner, and then doing longer rides, that's a perfect approach. You don't always need to improve every month. You also need to periodize a bit. Since we are already reaching like the end of this Q&A session, I do see like a pretty interesting question here from Anders Weiner. And maybe after that we can do the MGB question as well. But this one, what is the best approach to continue training for a week without my bike? Should I replace all my scheduled cycling workouts with running session? Well, this really hit the nail on its head, because that's what we designed it for. 100%. You need to basically do all your cycling sessions running, or do running sessions instead of cycling sessions.
Running sessions.
The only problem is, let's be honest here, it took me around like 9 months or so. So when I was still like a semi-pro and I did like competitive racing, I like every winter I tried to incorporate some running, and every winter I started out too fast. And every time after 3 or 4 sessions I was injured, and then I just threw my running shoes in the closet and I didn't touch them for another year, and then the year after that I made the exact same mistake over and over again. But now, about a year ago, I really started to pick up the pace really slow, and the first time in my life, it took me around 9 months to basically be able to do like 3 runs a week. And what's my somewhere in between like 30 and 50k a week. More 30k than 50k a week. That's kind of like I got my body to be able to to handle that training load with running, without being injured. So in my case, yeah, if I can't ride my bike for a week, now I have in my toolbox that I can like do 3 runs, and like I said, like somewhere in between 30 and 50k, and that's that's just a great tool basically. So yeah, you
Yeah.
should
Yeah.
be able to do that, but it takes time to be at that level.
Yeah, definitely. And I think to just finish off that question is to kind of just also know where you are at. So if you know you can only run 2 hours or 2 sessions a week, then realistically only schedule for yourself 2 running sessions a week.
Yep.
Because the point you're trying to make, I would see, is that don't go and overdo it and injure yourself. For when you do get back off that week of holiday, for example, or a week away off work, that you can actually get back on your bike injury free and want to cycle and want to run again. And I think to maybe just finish off the live Q&A with MGP's question.
Yep.
And I did a long run, 1 hour, 10 minutes at endurance pace and heart rate. Joint analysis gave it an intensity rating of 0.94, which is intensity factor, I would assume. I gave it an RPE of 3. So the main question is this because my cycling running heart rate zones differ?
Yes. So that differs, but the intensity rating.
It could also be the pace. Maybe he has set the user has set their pace maybe too low or in this case too high, and then they ran a little bit faster than they expected. So I would almost say
Exactly.
it's best for this user to maybe just log a ticket with me at support so that I can give him a very accurate answer on that. But in a bigger scene of things, it's most likely because your threshold is different.
Exactly. I think we should take a look at his profile settings, but there is a difference in like pace and heart rate zones cycling compared to running, as like earlier on in this session explained, because there's a difference in how much muscle fiber, muscle groups you can basically recruit. But yeah, it makes sense to open up a support ticket and really get into this specific session.
Yeah, definitely.
That kind of brings us to the end of the session.
So I think it's an exciting one. It's a new one for us from the running point of view, and yeah, I think it's really nice to do these and kind of get live questions and answers directly back to the users. And I think it's just I'm overwhelmed with excitement with the running feature. I think it's what we wanted from a company side for a while now, and I really think there's a good number of our users that have also been waiting for this.
Yeah, for sure. There was a lot of anticipation, and of course there are always things to improve. But based on the reactions we got so far and the engagement we experienced, people really like this feature. So that's really cool, for sure.
Yeah, that's very exciting.
Thank you all for watching. We'll be back with a new Q&A. Don't know when, don't know why, but we still have some great features coming up over already in this quarter. So maybe we can do another Q&A session about those features as well. But for now, thanks for watching. And Rohan, thank you very much. Thanks for guarding the fort in terms of support.
Yeah, always. I'm always here.
And have a great weekend.
Yeah, awesome. And if there's any users that's currently in the live where we've not fully answered your question, please feel free to send a ticket to support, and I'll get back to you on Monday and give you a more elaborate answer. And specifically MGB's question, I think that's something interesting to maybe just look at and give this user a
Yeah.
accurate answer. But yeah, thank you, Jim.